Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another video. In today's video, I want to go over some of the coolest rogue decks that I've seen from going back over the beginning of set 21 format data. So we're basically going to do a series of like mini deck profiles, and I'll explain a bit about what the decks are supposed to do with, you know, whatever knowledge or expertise I have with them. And I've learned a couple things actually about the Shroom and Salsa deck that I talked about last week that I wanted to share with you guys. So if you guys are new here, make sure to subscribe, hit that bell so you never miss a video. And if you guys do want to help support the channel and you plan on buying any of the cards in this video or any trading cards at all for that matter, it does really help me out if you were to use my link in the description to TCG Player. I really do appreciate it, guys. Now let's start off with this Shroom and Salsa deck, a deck that I don't think anyone expected to top in set 21, but it's a very, very cool thing that it did. Starting off the leader, what strengths does this leader offer us? Well, a couple actually. So it draws cards when you combo, so that generates really efficient Z energy, and it also warps cards from your opponent's drop area. So in certain matchups, that's a really, really good upside because some decks need their drop area to function, and if they don't, that's cool. You still draw cards off comboing, so there's no real downside when you want to make that super efficient Z energy. Now we have the activate main on the awakened side. If there are no battle cards in your opponent's drop area, choose one black evil wizard, demon race, or demon god with energy cost of 2 or less in your deck or hand. Play it, then shuffle your deck if you look through it. Now last time we talked about this card, Toa Dark Demon Realm Madness, which is the new champ pack that came out to pretty much support all Demon Realm and Demon God types of decks, but I didn't really get the purpose of the card in this deck because the second auto is like a double strike granting Champa, but it's tied to Spirit Boost, and there are actually no unisons in this main deck, so I didn't really get the main point of this card. Obviously that means that, you know, the swap and the first auto are pretty much what you're looking for out of this card, but what a commenter pointed out to me on my video last week that I think is actually quite cool is that this is essentially 3 attacks for 1 energy. So again, with that leader activate main, you can play this out for 1 energy. Then the auto says when this card's played, choose one of your opponent's battle cards, sends the owner's warp. Then this card gets plus 5,000 power for the turn. So that's a 1 cost 20k critical that then swaps for 3 into a Toa with energy cost of 3. And in that last video, we talked about Demon God Toa Umbral Might, which has the ability to make your opponent basically choose between 2 things. They either warp 2 cards from their battle area and or hand, or you take control of their unison is basically what it boils down to. And I didn't really get the whole point of it because if your opponent doesn't have a unison in play, I'm pretty sure they can just choose to not warp any cards, and if they don't have a unison, this card basically becomes a vanilla. However, it was pointed out to me that for 1 energy, again by that awakened leader activate main, you play out this Toa, swing for the 20k critical, and then you play this Toa and swing 2 more times for 15k. So that is 3 swings for 1 energy, which is definitely a very, very nice rate when you think about it. And if this thing happens to have an effect, if your opponent happens to have a unison in play that you could potentially take control of, they're basically caught between a rock and a hard place, which is kind of a neat situation to be in. But the worst case is a 1 cost 3 attacks. That's what I wanted to kind of clarify for myself and for you guys. Going through the rest of the deck here, very techy with the 3 rather Black Smoke Dragon accumulated negativity. This card's great, especially in a black deck where you could charge it if you don't end up needing it. But again, the versatility here is so good. I do think a lot of the times you're probably not targeting unisons like we used to when SS4 Gogeta, Sin, and Gamma were in the format. But hand control is much more of a thing now, so of course you can use the draw 2 ability, or just get rid of something ignoring barrier if you absolutely need to. Cool thing about this too is that Machikabura Broken Seal is playable from that same leader activate main, so you can shut down cards like Goku Gohan Father Son Solidarity at the cost of 1, where other decks have to do it at the cost of 2 if they want to play this specific card. And the quote-unquote boss monster here is Demon God Shroom and Demon God Salsa Unending Nightmare. Now this is a card that was printed for the newer Shroom and Salsa leader, but of course it's still playable here. So let's give this card a read. Double Strike Servant, so it's going to be a 35k, not a 25k. Permanent, this card's placed from in your drop from your battle area or combo area, placed at the bottom of the owner's deck instead. Auto, when this card's played, your opponent chooses 1 card in their hand and one of their battle cards ignoring barrier and sends it to the owner's warp. And then activate battle, limit 1 for 2 black. If you have 3 or more energy and there are 2 or more black battle cards in your combo area, play this card from your warp. And I noticed that one of the main cards that we're playing here to put the card in the warp is Trunks Time Regulator. Simply overwhelm it out, draw 2, then choose a card in your hand and put it in the warp. And again, we're heavily benefited from comboing in this deck, so the synergy there is really, really good. It's a very, very cool main deck for sure. Z deck seems pretty standard. We of course have the Z leader. Now I want to give this one a quick read. Z Awaken for a black if your life's at 2 or less. Definitely quite risky, but it is 20k double strike, so very, very good base stats. Activate main once per turn. Place one of your Z energy in the owner's drop. You may look at the bottom card of your deck and play it. If it's a Shroom or Salsa with Servant, energy cost of 3 or less, and place at the bottom of the deck if you don't. Activate battle if this card's in battle. Use 2 Demon Realm or Demon God cards, both mono black without super combo, from your warp in a combo. So that alone will give you the 2 combos required to play out Unending Nightmare. Again, very, very cool synergy. And the side deck definitely seems pretty standard, except for the very cool addition of Broly, Omen of Evolution, which we talked about in the last video. Basically allows you to knock out a card your opponent's comboing, and because it says with a combo cost of 0, you can knock out super combos, which will both save you on combo power and prevent your opponent from charging Z energy. So with that out of the way, let's move along to the next deck. We have Android 16, which has really seen a lot less play ever since Android 21 came out and basically became the blue-green deck. But it's still interesting to see this deck, do some things, because it's definitely the most arrival focused of the blue-green decks. I think when you look at blue-green, you've got Android 21 from set 20 power absorbed. You've also got Expert Deck 21, which is much more of like a hand control deck. And this is much more of a rival-focused deck. Android 16 did take a really big hit with the limit of Majin Buu Unison, because the main play was ramp on turn 2 with the 2-cost Android 16, and then play Majin Buu on your next 4 energy. But still, I mean, we're seeing a lot of the same things here. With the inclusion of a lot of the new cards, like we do have, of course, the full power counter, which is our Floodgate, does cost the full 4 in this deck, but I think it's also going to give you that check land, which is definitely not too bad either. Now, the one really cool thing about this list that I am like kind of over the moon about is the inclusion of Android 20 Vile Creator, a set 2 card that, if I'm getting this correctly from my memorization of like how brackets and different things work in card effects, this says search a card from your deck that has Android in its card name, not character name. Obviously this is in French and I can't read French. I looked it up beforehand, but I'm pretty sure the way that's worded allows you to search any card in your deck regardless of cost, because there's no cost restriction on this card, as long as it has Android in the card name. So that is a 2 cost that lets you search out your SCR straight from the deck. And we talked about this SCR quite a bit. This card is honestly game breaking. So yeah, this is a really cool thing that I haven't thought about in a long time, and honestly I almost feel like every single blue-green deck should play like 1 to 2 copies of this Android 20 to super consistently get Transcendental Predator to your hand, because I feel like that card, man, when that card comes down, your odds of winning the game go up dramatically. Let's go to the next deck. We have Green Gogeta VR, which definitely takes a huge hit from the loss of the super combo loop. That was a big thing this deck had going for it, because this super combo, I believe, was pretty searchable in this deck. So that's kind of unfortunate. We will see if this deck is able to continue to be played after this, but what's cool is it does kind of have the ability to use Uneasing Awaken Rage, which it won't get the draw that the Gohan leader gets, but it's still a really good floodgate for mono green Saiyan leaders. And of course, there's a new champ pack card, Gogeta Birth the Ultimate Warrior, which lets us cheat out our Gogeta BR 8-drop and give it dual attack. Now, what's cool about this is this card is very, very comparable to Goku Gohan Father-Son Solidarity. And what's kind of an upside to it is that in the green mirrors, it can't be KO'd and it's on play, whereas Goku Gohan is on swing. So that does give it a little bit of a weakness in, let's say, the yellow matchup that can sometimes prevent that card from attacking, or other cards like Shin Noble Supremacy from attacking as well. So yeah, this card comes down 35k, dual attack, double strike. Doesn't have the same burn that Goku Gohan Father-Son Solidarity has, but it is a pretty neat upside. I do wonder if losing Super Combo Loop is going to make this deck even more rogue tier than it was. That would be unfortunate, because it was cool to see this deck do a few more things here and there, but I guess time will tell on that one. Next up, we have Hatchack, which was from a very early Australian tournament in this format. Hatchack is one of those decks, guys, that I low-key think is always good, and I've said this in other videos, like sporadically. It feels like Hatchack is almost like always good, but people don't want to play it, and I totally get it. Like, to me, this deck is quite boring to be like this passive, but it's still a very neat deck in that it can facilitate the 8-drop SS4 Gogeta Thwarting the Dark Empire. This is such a cool boss monster, and in my opinion, like relatively well balanced, because it doesn't even have barrier or deflect, but it's really hard for black decks to facilitate this card, because Tapping out for 4 in a black deck will leave you very, very vulnerable. Black decks don't only have the defenses that a lot of other color has, especially in the free department, but this deck facilitates this card very well because your leader is basically a flying Nimbus, so of course there's that. One other cool card is Black Mass Sand the Devastator. So this card basically deals burn damage. So during your turn, if your leader is black, there are a total of 15 or more sand cards in your and your opponent's drop, which you can totally rely on your opponent helping you fuel for the most part. When this card's attack is negated, or when this card fails to deal damage to your opponent in a battle with their leader card, choose one card in your opponent's life and send it to the warp. So basically when this thing attacks, or I think if they kill it mid-battle, I think that will also stop the effect from resolving. This thing is dealing a damage, which is kind of insane to think about, to be honest. And that's exactly what a deck like this wants, is like that ability to deal that last damage without necessarily having to go into battle. So let's take a quick look at the sideboard here. 4 full copies of Deborah, and a deck like this, you can totally charge it if it becomes too much. 4 copies of Petrification. Definitely surprised to see it in the side deck, not in the main deck. But I mean, it was probably a best of 1 pre-side tournament anyway, so that probably doesn't matter too much. But yeah, Hatchack, probably low-key, kind of always good. And then we have SS4 Vegeta ramp, and I think this one's so interesting because 1, it uses a lot of the new cards, and 2, when I'm gearing up for a competitive tournament and I'm looking at maybe playing like a ramp deck, I would ask myself, why would I play SS4 Vegeta when Android 21 is the much more tried and true and successful ramp deck? Even at that same token, I think like Blue Beerus is even a little bit more tested and true than SS4 Vegeta. And SS4 Vegeta definitely has its issues. If your opponent plays a deck with lots of blockers, it's going to be very difficult for you to actually get your ramp off. But it's still very cool. This deck plays a lot of the new cards. We have Vegeta Disturbing Harbinger, which I don't think being a Vegeta GT matters all that much in this deck, but I guess it actually does help out for Baby Shining Gold Evil Lifeform. And that's the thing about this build. It actually plays on a much lower curve than like a lot of other blue ramp decks do, because you've also got Oob, Focus, Full Strength, Blow, which seems to be a staple of most mono blue decks nowadays, especially a lot of Soul Striker lists that we've been seeing. But what's crazy about this is we don't even see Ultra Instinct Kamehameha in the main deck. It's a side deck card. Definitely very curious to know what that would come in for. Like, I thought that was kind of just like vital to this deck's entire strategy, but I guess maybe not in this particular build. I'm not really sure, to be honest. But still a very cool, like, you know, off meta ramp deck that's playing a lot of new cards if you want to, you know, go ahead and break out a lot of those new cards you've been waiting to play. But anyways, guys, that's what I got for you in today's video. Lots of cool rogue decks to try out here in this format. The format's definitely still figuring itself out. Obviously, we have top contenders like 21 and Green Gohan, but it's still cool to play decks with characters that you love. So if you guys have any questions, drop them down in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.